I'm not sure if I'll take that off or not. Oh dear, always have your sockets ready. Not terrible, it's not as bad as it could have been. I just don't need to, he's done it all. Yeah, I don't know why I'm wearing one glove, not another glove. You can see it's pretty filthy. Right, okay, here we go. Just can't quite make out the lettering. Oh, it's oil all over the place. You know, just get the rust off. Got to get rid of all of this, So here's his, what do you call it, the thing on top of their head. But I'm not taking any more apart than that. I'm sure it's got a specific name. Somebody nicked it, unfortunately. A flappy red bit of skin. So this morning I got 2 items of mail in the post to do with the Giletto. One is a dating letter from the Motor GUZZI Club GB, which you can see up there. I'm a member of the Motor GUZZI Club, Great Britain, and I have been for many years, and it's a really good club. I'm not really a camping, you know, kind of rally type person, but for everything else, you know, it's good to be part of. And one of the benefits is that you can get dating letters. I think if you're not a member, you've got to pay for them. Anyway, I've asked their dating officer for a letter, and he sent me this. And the way it works is that because the club are recognised by DVLA, so in the UK our vehicle registration organisation is called the DVLA. I can't remember what it stands for. Driver and Vehicle Licensing, can't even say it, Authority, I believe. Anyway, they send you what they reckon, and what they've said here, they reckon actually it was built in 1954. So to me, it doesn't make a difference if it's 54 or 55. It's all stamped, and I will send this off with the Nova number. So if you bring a country in nowadays to Britain that's come from another country, you have to, well, I'm talking about, you know, used vehicles, old used vehicles, like old bikes or scooters. You have to get a Nova number. I don't know what Nova stands for, but you can get hold of that. And with that Nova number and this dating letter, I need to apply to the DVLA. I think you have to pay them about 55 quid. And you send it all off, and they give it, well, hopefully without any problem, they give it a British number plate, which is great. And it's normally an age-related plate too. So you can see here the GUZZI Club, they've sent a whole list of frame numbers, and these are photocopies from the that's from the Mario Colombo GUZZI book. But I think it's very good service, very good indeed. So I'll send that off. More information there, which is fantastic. The other letter with the lovely Dutch stamp came from my mate in Holland, Fred, who is really into his GUZZI Gilettos, and he's got a lot of parts, and he helped me with some parts in the past. So I'm going to open this and see what he's sent me. Well, I know what he sent me, hopefully, because I asked him for it, but he's a really, really nice bloke, and he's really helped me out a few times. So this is what I've been waiting for, to get on with the engine. Oh, look, goodies. So what do we have? Very well packed, Fred, as well. Very good. So what he sent me is, first of all, head gasket. It's basically just a big crush washer. I'll grease that a bit. The one I took out there was a copper washer, but it doesn't make any difference. This is new. So that's the head gasket. There are 2 of these small little spacers that go in the, they help to space out the bolt that holds on the rocker arms. So it's also an exhaust gasket for the silencer, sits on the tube of the silencer. 3 little felt things. I don't know what these 2 do. I think one is to do with the flywheel, but I probably won't need it. But the one I really need is that sits on the there on top of the inlet, the intake valve, like that. Don't know what it does, just stops oil dripping down it. Anyway, the old one was in there. And 2 other little bits and pieces of these, which are spacers for the rocker arms that sit in here, and they help to space out the bolt for the rocker arm, with the rocker going across there, and head gasket. I'll grease that up so that sits tightly in there, very tightly. So that's all great. Oh, a galette or a decal as well, which I'll stick on the front of it. I need to get some Motor Guzzi decals too. But anyway, thank you, Fred. So it means I can get on the top end now, because I can start to rebuild the rocker arms and hopefully get the head put on. So what I have to do now is start trying to clean this area up. I've been not particularly putting it off, but it's not really nice. You know, I'm not going to get it clean as if it had been aqua blasted, but I just need to get rid of the dirt, and I need to make sure that these areas around here where the push rod tubes sit are nice and clean. Obviously around where the cylinder head's going to go back on, I can't remember if I mentioned I have cleaned up this piston a bit, but you know, again, like that, it's okay like that. I'll try and clean up these oil lines a bit. Then I've got to put the fuel tap back in up here, which is where it sits. Put the carb back in, just generally make it a little better. I'm now going to start rebuilding the rocker assemblies. I've already put the valve, the exhaust valve back in. I haven't put the intake valve in yet because I was waiting for this little part to come here from Holland. This is the old one, completely worn out. And what this does, and I've checked on the parts diagram, sorry, wrong part, number 38. So that's it there, and it basically sits just inside that kind of bottom support for the valve springs, and it must just stop oil going down the intake guide. I don't know what it's there for, but it's there, and I've got the part. I always use GUZZI parts books. I download them from the internet where they're freely available, and I put them on my ancient iPad, and I always have the factory manual, so I know that I'm not missing pieces, I'm putting pieces in the right order. So here are all the parts, so I'm going to put that inside there, put that in there. I need to clean this up a bit, clean it all up, put the intake valve in. I mean, these are used, but they're all in good condition, all being cleaned up. And then rebuild the rocker arms. All these bits need washing a bit. There's a rocker arm. That's the push rod tube, the intake push rod tube. And again, it needs cleaning up before it goes back on. It doesn't seem to have, one thing is a bit odd, these parts here, they're not totally rubber, they just seem to, they just bolt in with the head, but it's obviously you know, enough to stop the oil coming out or the dirt getting back in, getting in. Anyway, those are the parts, and they're the same on the parts book. So I'll get on and do that. Okay, the cylinder head is it's ready to go back on now. I've put the new head gasket in, I've pressed it in, fits perfectly. I greased it up as well, just greased it as well, just help the seal. This is the old one, which, to be honest, I could also clean up and re-anneal it, heat it, let it cool down. I'll keep it for a spare. There's the head, you can see the GUZZI stamp on it. It's a very nice cylinder head. Make a nice bit of wall art in a man cave, such as this. This is my man cave with my Elvis clock and various other bits and pieces. So the rocker arms are back in, everything's done up tight. You split pins. Yeah, I've cleaned it as best as I can. Then, you know, if I clean it too much, it's just going to make the rest of the bike look like that also needs cleaning loads. Well, I must clean in there a little bit. I've got a new exhaust gasket for that. Anyway, apart from that, it's ready, and I've got the push rod tubes, rocker covers ready to go. I am, as I mentioned, I think before, I'm going to just take the rubber, they're not really seals, they're just rubber washers to be honest, but I guess they seal the oil. I'm going to take them out, clean them up and boil them in boiling water, then press them back in to make sure that they kind of reform a half decent shape. But like I said, they're not hard, they're actually pretty soft. Yeah, they might even be reasonably new, who knows. So I think they'll do the job. If they don't, I'll have to buy some others, but I haven't got them here at the moment. And I've cleaned, you know, as much as I'm going to, the area around the head. The push rods, I've still got to put the oil feeds back in, but that is now piston sinking at top dead centre, and ready for the head to go back on. And I know it's at top dead centre because, like most GUZZIs, there's a, I'll smooth this, there's a mark on the crankcase, and there's a mark, it's a bit hard to see, there's a mark just on the flywheel there, which basically matches up with the mark on there. I'll see if I can focus it. And yeah, it's impossible to see. That basically means that the piston's at the top dead centre. I've now got the cylinder head back on after doing all the work on the cylinder head. I've done the tappets, so it's currently sitting at TDC with both valves closed, and I've done the valve adjustments, which are 0.20 of a mil. What's that in thou? 8 thou or something? I can't remember exactly. And it all seems to work out. And there's compression now, so when I put my finger over the plug hole and kick it over, there's, I wouldn't say there's plenty of compression, because I don't think as a new machine it had that much compression anyway, but at least there's compression that there wasn't before. I've taken all the oil lines off, which are here, and I've replaced all the fibre washers, all the red fibre washers, which is what they use on these traditionally. So all the old oil has now been drained, and I've replaced all the oil lines. So that oil line runs around here, comes up here and joins up to the oil tank. So that's the oil tank, I'm sure you remember. Then this inside here, this bolts onto there, and I've replaced all the washers here as well. And this this oil filter in here, that unbolts. I'm pretty sure I've showed it in the previous clip. That's unbolts. I've cleaned that all out. Basically, that's all gone back on now. So all the oil lines should be clean. I also cleaned the oil line underneath. Yeah, I know it's a mess underneath. It's just how it is. This one here. So this is a sump bolt. So when you're draining the oil, it comes out there. And this bolt is sort of hollow and also retains the oil pressure valve. There's a little sprung pressure valve in there, and that all sits in there. And if you download the parts book for this, you can see all that really clearly. They're really nicely put together, really beautifully drawn, and you can see all the parts. So there should never be any difficulty really in knowing which bit goes where. That said, I did, even though I tried my best, I did mix up the push rods. So you got intake, so this is the exhaust and intake, and I mixed them up, but I went back and looked at previous videos and I realised that the push rod for the intake and the head are slightly differently shaped on the end. On the exhaust push rod, it has they're the same length, so that's important to realise they're the same length, but the exhaust push rods have a slightly more elongated end to them. But again, you know, if you download all the manuals, you can work that out. So anyhow, now I'm going to clean up all the rocker covers. I'm going to look at, I'll probably reuse the gaskets. I'll clean them up and just grease them for now, and then I'm going to replace the carburettor and the fuel tap. So fuel tap will go up here. Going to replace the carburettor. You can see the slide hanging there. And I'm going to put some oil into it, and then I'm going to kick it over and see if it works. I'll put the exhaust back on. I've got a new exhaust gasket for that. They're only kind of copper rings. With the arrows lining up on the crankcase and the flywheel, this is where you do the tappets at, on the compression stroke. So you can hear the gap there. You can hear the gap there. It was quite fiddly, I have to say, to put the head back on, because you have to get these push rod tunnels all to line up while you're putting the head on at the same time, and you have to put both the tunnels on at the same time. And it's not that easy, because it all has to kind of fit accurately. But it's all gone back together, and I'm hoping it won't leak from these seals. I did put a little bit of Permatex, which is like a semi-permanent gasket, you know, very thin coat just on the rubber seals here. You know, I don't feel they needed replacing, but maybe if you're rebuilding the engine completely, you'd replace them. But I boiled the rubber seals in water and they fitted perfectly, so I think with a little bit of Permatex on, they should be all right. I torqued down the head. There's a bolt there, a nut, stud there, and one underneath somewhere. Just here the other side of the cylinder. And I did them up to about 18 foot-pounds torque. I did ask on a Galesso forum, which I'm on, and people came up with all kind of different things, but basically there's nothing in the manual that I could find. So I did them to about that. I think somebody suggested it, about 18 to 20, which I think sounds reasonable to me. They don't need to be particularly tight. All they need to do is just really kind of crush the head gasket, which is like an aluminium circle basically, and it felt fine. So I've done that with my torque wrench, so it's now really more or less ready for me to put the rest of the bits and pieces back on, put some oil into it, and then some fuel, and see what happens. I've decided to make a new rocker gasket. The two that came, one is reusable. That one on the right, in my opinion, it's absolutely fine to reuse. I'll clean it and grease it. This one is just too knackered, really. I've tried to clean it up, but it's about to break. About to break there. So I've got lots of gasket paper. I often make my own gaskets. You can buy it on eBay and stuff. I've got a big roll of it in the other room as well. So basically I'll stick that on there. This is going to be pretty easy to do. I'll draw around it. I've got some punches, hole punches, puncture holes, cut it out, grease it up and put it on. Okay, there we go, gasket done. That'll do fine. Not as accurate, I know, as a real one, but good thick gasket paper. Once with some grease on that, will be fine. So these are the punches that I use, very useful. And just a pair, you punch out the holes, draw it all up with a pencil. You know, I could probably order these from Italy, but with all the postage I'll probably pay 20-30 quid. So it's a no-brainer just to make your own gaskets when required. Right, I'm going to grease these up and get the rocker covers on now. I finally got around to taking the points cover off. This is it here, just a piece of, well, it's probably Bakelite, 1954 plastic. That basically sits there behind the fly, just behind that bit, the flywheel, but it covers up the points, so it gives you access to the points, which you can see obviously there. That's the points. Last time I had this connected up to a battery and with the ignition in, it gives a massive spark. So you know, I'm assuming the points are working all right. They look, I have looked at them briefly, they look pretty, one of the plates looks quite warm. And I've checked that there's a gap. I've just adjusted the screw slightly. I have no problem putting new points on, but to be honest, I just want to get it running with, you know, how it is at the moment. Just see if it runs, then I'll, you know, bother getting new points and stuff. I can get points from Italy, no problem. Down here's the advanced retard mechanism. So that works on the lever up there. So you can see advance and retard. So that moves the whole back plate. So I'm moving the lever up on the bar. And you can see you can advance and retard the whole ignition. It's quite stiff. I actually think this spring, you can see that moving. I think the spring is probably a bit too much for it. And I don't want to break the cable. So again, I just want to get it running. Sorry, it's a bit dark. I just want to get it running. But at least it's moving now. It wasn't moving at all before, but now it's all moving. And you can see the whole place is moving. So it does work. But again, till I get it running, I'm not sure what to do with it really. But it works for now. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid taking the flywheel off. Yeah, I don't mind doing that, but it's, you know, I think I might, to fit new points, I think I might have to take the flywheel off. That said, on the last Gillette I had, which is a 175, I put a new set of points on that, and I didn't have to remove the flywheel. Because, you know, to be honest, there's no reason for me, apart from changing the points, which obviously if I have to do, I'll do. There's no point in removing the flywheel. But to remove the flywheel, I'm going to have to make, I'm either going to have to buy, which I won't do, or make a puller, which fits in here. I can do that. You just get a piece of, you know, angle iron or something. 2 bolts going to there, another bolt in the middle. In fact, I might have a puller already. I'd have to double check. I've made some pullers in the past. And then basically, first of all, you take the nut off. Then you put the puller onto the end of the crank. Bolt the 2 bolts into the flywheel, and that will just pull it off. Cylinder head's all back on. It's got an NGK B6ES plug in it, I believe. And I've also replaced the carburetor. So the carb's all been cleaned up, sorted out, rebuilt. New gaskets where necessary. Well, I've made some of the gaskets. I've also put the fuel tap back, and it seems to work okay. The fuel coming through is pretty clean, which is good. I did flush the fuel tank through. Until I get it running, hopefully, I can't really see what the fuel flow is like, because the problem with this is because the fuel tank is very tall, up and down. Although I've put quite a bit of fuel in already, it doesn't seem to be coming through readily. But I think it's because the fuel tank is tall and narrow, and you need to fill it up quite a lot. Anyway, we'll see once I get it going, hopefully. Air cleaner's back on. I've got to find the rubber gasket for it, which I have put somewhere. But basically that just screws on. So this has all been cleaned out, as I've shown in the previous video. That's where the carb comes through, so that's back on. That's the fuel tap, which works fine. So what I've got to do now is fill it full of oil, 3 litres of a straight 40. Then I've got all these bits loosened off. These little nice aluminium pieces that keep the rubbers in place, the footboard rubbers. And I think, as I said before, I've bought some new rubber strip because they're so worn out. These ones, they're the original ones, they're awful. So I thought it'd be nice to replace them. So I'm going to take all these off. I've been leaving to soak in WD-40. They'll all come off, and I'll replace the rubbers. I might repaint some of the black here. So I'm just filling the Gillette with oil. This is an SAE 40, which I found I had on the shelf. So straight 40, which is fine for this bike. So it needs, well, in the manual it says 3 litres approximately. So this is 2 litres. I think what I'll do, I'll check the oil level with the dipstick. And I think I'll just, at this point, I think I'm going to try and start it. Just leave that to drain in there. I did before make the mistake of, I was just checking all the oil connections, but I'd forgotten to put, see this little bolt here with the thread, I'd forgotten to put that back in, and oil started dripping out of there. So you can see I've lost a little bit on there, but that will clean up obviously. So I've replaced that. There's a little fibre gasket behind there, and this is where normally an oil tap would sit, but I don't have an oil tap. And then on top of that, there's a little cover with a nut and a washer, and that just sits with the paint as the rest of it. Battery's on charge. And even just turning it by hand, oh, there goes the filler jug. Yeah, compression feels really good now. So, you know, I'm really hoping that the work I've done on the head and everything else means it's going to run well. I did the other day, I had to readjust the spring here on the kickstart quadrant because it had come off. Sorry, let me move these things out of the way. It had come off this little place here, so the spring hooks onto there. And at first I thought the spring was broken, but it's not. And the kickstart, I need to bolt this up. But it returns pretty well now. And even though, you know, it's not a very high compression engine, even trying to turn this with my hand, I can feel there's good compression. So already now, I think it might try and start it up. I'll have to put the camera on a tripod and we'll see what happens.